Literally. The idea was to take these anglers and parachute them into a lake they'd never fished.
We were going to have this Super Bowl tournament. That's what he called it. It's the Super Bowl of bass fishing.
If it weighed more than 10 pounds, and Ray took whatever his choice of baits out of the box, and you lost them.
People saying we're going to Mexico, we're going to Canada, you know, we're going down into Cuba.
Very important that we didn't want anybody to have fished that lake.
You fished 8 or 9 hours and then stayed up all night.
I'm going, holy moly, there's the classic for me right there.
And if y'all are having trouble figuring out what's going on, you just hold on for the next few minutes, and I'll tell you about the love of my life, bass fishing, championship style.
The Bassmaster Classic is professional bass fishing's marquee event. Today, tens of thousands of fans show up to watch their heroes battle for professional bass fishing's world championship. The Classic is the equivalent to the Masters in golf and the Super Bowl in football. But back in 1971, nobody seemed to grasp exactly what professional bass fishing was about. Ray Scott planned to change all that.
In 1968, when I started bass, and we were having a real difficult time getting the media, the newspaper people, TV people, and so forth, magazine people, to pay much attention to the bass organization.
None of the outdoor magazines, Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, or Sports Afield, would touch Ray Scott. The feeling was that, well, these bass fishing tournaments were dishonest.
There was a lot of dissent among the outdoor press and the public in general as to whether people should fish competitively, and most of all, the sin of fishing for money.
Bob Cobb and I, in 1970, were driving to Atlanta from Montgomery. We were frustrated, both of us, knew we had something right and good, but we had no really appreciable attention from the media. And so the idea hit my head on the way to Atlanta. I said, well, why don't we just have a tournament, a big year-end kind of an affair, and we'll invite the media to come so that they can find out that they're not bad guys, and the whole idea of competitive bass fishing is not so bad.
We had tournaments during the year, but what we did was decided we'd just link these into a series of tournaments, and we'd have the best anglers in the country at the end of the year fish the test of the best, and we created that as a Bassmaster's Classic.
In early '71, he announced that there was going to be a classic event at the end to really fish off for the first, you know, really professional World Championship.
We were going to have this Super Bowl tournament. That's what he called it. He says, it's the Super Bowl of bass fishing.
It was going to be a big deal, and the top 24 would go, and that got everybody on the toes and got you really, really serious about this fishing.
And so the idea was born, and Bob said, where will we have it? I said, why don't we hold it in some mystery lake, and just, that'll make everybody wonder where it is, and we'll tell them it's a secret, and that gives us a year to figure out where the heck we got to go.
We came up with the idea that no one would know where they were going to fish in the tournament. It was going to call a Mystery Classic.
I don't know whether it was Ray or Bob or both of them together came up with the idea to do this in total secrecy, not telling anybody where you were going.
Literally. The idea was to take these anglers and parachute them into a lake they'd never fished and see who'd come out the best.
There was a lot of mystery to it, which made everybody enjoy it. It was a deal where we didn't know what lake we were going to, and we were only allowed to carry so much tackle.
You could only bring 10 pounds of tackle and 4 rods and reels.
Rather than just bring all their tackle, they selectively, carefully picked. They didn't know where they were going. They didn't know whether to be fishing muddy water or clear water.
They had to have deep water baits, shallow water baits, grass baits, worms, crankbaits.
If it weighed more than 10 pounds, and Ray took whatever his choice of baits out of the box, and you lost them.
And we gave them a plain old box that they provided us with. Everybody had their own box. They put their lures in it. But we knew the box weighed, let's say, 3 pounds. When we got to the Classic, we would pull a guy out of the audience, pull out 4 or 5 guys, they'd bring their tackle box. And we put it on the scale. If it weighed over 13 pounds, they got a problem.
If it went over, then Ray and I got to pick whatever we wanted out of the tackle box to reduce it back to 10 pounds.
We got some real jewels, and did they get them back? Never.
So you can imagine these people weighing quarter-ounce and half-ounce slip sinkers and spinner baits. And
when we started putting our tackle boxes together, you had to be very selective. You just didn't start throwing a bunch of stuff in there. You counted every slip sinker, every hook, every spinner bait, every crankbait, top water. I finally took mine to the post office and made sure that I didn't have over 10 pounds.
BASS made the decision to make the Classic a winner-take-all tournament, with the winner getting an unthinkable $10,000.
We had about $10,000 to put in the purse, and we made the decision, let's just put it all on the first place horse.
We didn't have that much money, so we just decided to pile it all on the winner.
It was a winner-take-all. You know, second place was last place.
That'll make it look a lot bigger if you got $10,000 at first place. And that was big dollars then. Back in 1971, you could still get a nickel Coke, and gasoline was 27 cents a gallon.
$10,000 back then was like $200,000 now. Oh, it was an unheard of amount of money.
And who would have thought that a man could win $10,000 for fishing 3 days? Unreal.
Coming up next.
But we didn't let anybody know about it. I slept with my wife, as did Bob Cobb and Harold Sharp, and not one of our wives knew where we were going.
Bassmaster Classic Yearbook is brought to you by Citgo, Bush, Purolator,
The concept of the Bassmaster Classic was starting to unfold, but it needed something to attract more attention. To create a buzz, BASS decided to keep the location a secret. No one had any idea where it was going to be held, including the anglers themselves.
Ray Scott, the founder of Bass, Harold Sharp, the tournament director, and myself as a PR director, we were the only people that were there, knew where we were going and what was going on. It was just total secrecy.
The ladies that worked in our offices, they used to go through our garbage cans and listen in on telephone conversations and do everything they could to try to find out where we were going.
I had 3 or 4 secretaries that, you know, that's like any woman, you know, they keep their ear to the ground, and they knew there was a Mystery Lake, and obviously natural curiosity. But we didn't let anybody know about it. I slept with my wife, as did Bob Cobb and Harold Sharp, and not one of our wives knew where we were going.
We were guessing from the time he announced it to that Ray told us, you know. I mean, there was people saying we're going to Mexico, we're going to Canada, you know, we're going to down into Cuba.
May I see a show of hands of everyone that was positive where we were going before last night?
Oh gosh, it's got to be Sam Rayburn. It's got to be Toledo Bend.
Everybody's imagination was running wild.
You were going anywhere. You asked 24 guys, you got that many different opinions.
To my knowledge, no one outside the need-to-know basis discovered where the site of the Classic was.
But once the contestants were determined, we simply invited them to come to a rendezvous place. We all congregated for that tournament in Atlanta, Georgia.
We all flew to Atlanta and had a big banquet, and the next day, the riders, as well as the anglers, all got on a Delta jet.
We knew that there would be some sneaky guys who would try to find out where the plane was headed. But we paid a little extra to the right guy with Delta, and he made sure that the women on there and the people, staff, would not say to anybody, and the media, for example, were going on the plane asking these girls, "Hi, sugar, where are we headed?"
And the fishermen, each one that walked by would say, "Where are y'all going?" "Well, we're going to Chicago." Well, the next guy would come in and say, "Where are you going?" And this guy might say, "Well, we're going to Dallas." They had already been warned that these guys were going to ask questions. So by the time the fishermen were all loaded, we was going all over the world.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got 24 of the greatest fishermen in the world headed for the Bassmaster Classic. Now, all of you here have been waiting for about 3 months to find out the destination. We are right now at 12,000 feet, and we're going to open the envelope and tell you where you're headed. You wouldn't expect the World Series to be played on a Little League diamond, And if you wouldn't, certainly you wouldn't expect this quality of fisherman, the world's greatest 24, to go to a fish hatchery for a tournament. So we picked the toughest lake we could possibly find. And the envelope, I'll open it now. And in here we have the destination. I know all of you have been waiting. Don't think I wrote it down. You're headed for Lake Mead. Next stop, Las Vegas.
When they said Las Vegas, Roland Martin, you could see the blood drain out of his face. He was, you know, within inches of going fishing there 2 months earlier.
Bass Angler Sportsman Society was conducting seminars with expert pros like Roland Martin.
Ray had hired me to travel from Connecticut to California on the Bluebird bus, and we were doing seminars.
Everywhere we went, Roland took his tackle, took his waders, took his, you know, everything.
He had a desire to catch a bass in every state, or at least make a cast in every state.
He'd fish in a wet spot on the side of the road. I mean, that's how enthused he was about fishing.
And so we were on a swing on the West Coast, out to L.A., and we stopped at Las Vegas.
And we knew that we'd have a problem when we got to Las Vegas because he would know about Lake Mead, he'd want to go fish it.
Ray was getting with this guy, Don Payne. I'd see him talking over in the corner, and when I could, I'd talk to Don Payne. I said, Don, we're going to be out here for the weekend, and I'd sure like to fish Lake Mead because I've read about Lake Mead in all the papers. He says, well, I'm going tomorrow. He says, you can go fishing with me. What I didn't realize, Ray was talking to Don about arranging this classic, and he didn't want me to fish, of course, because I was qualified for the classic.
And we found out he had never fished Lake Mead, so it was very important that we didn't want anybody to have fished that lake.
So he told Don to cancel the trip. So Don came up to me about an hour later and said, Roland, I can't go. I got something came up. I can't fish tomorrow. We can't go tomorrow.
So we had to keep him busy. We kept him on slot machines and kept him here and kept him there and kept him busy.
Tommy Lester and I took him to a girly show.
And he never got to the lake.
Kind of the unique thing about that event, I don't know if it's ever been that way since, is there was not a single angler in that top 24 that had ever seen Lake Mead.
I've always heard of Lake Mead, but never dreamed of getting to fish Lake Mead.
So it was a true test. Nobody had ever seen the lake, nobody had ever fished it. So everybody was starting out, you know, the same way, never seen the lake at all.
Up next on Bassmaster Classic Yearbook.
You can't go to Vegas, even go in the restroom, somebody didn't say Keno or offer you to pull a slot or something. So you know some of these guys that spent some time at the tables.
I don't think they slept the whole time we were there.
One of the reasons we picked Las Vegas was the fact that it's sort of a showbiz town. It's a show-off town. It's where you have all the color and fireworks and everything take place. And it was an exciting, memorable week.
It was a great week in Las Vegas. We were treated like kings.
Red carpet was laid when we landed, and the buses carried us to the motel.
We stayed downtown at the Union Plaza.
We old country people, and we'd stay at the Motel 6. But boy, we was in hog heaven when we went there.
Most people associate Las Vegas with slot machines and blackjack, and the classic competitors were no different.
You can't go to Vegas, even go in the restroom, somebody didn't say Keno or offer you to pull a slot or something. So you know some of these guys that spent some time at the tables or at the slot machines.
Las Vegas was wild. You fished 8 or 9 hours and then stayed up all night.
Don Butler and Al St. Romain, I don't think they slept the whole time we were there.
Two of the guys that stayed up the entire night gambling at Vegas and then went out and fished the rest of the day. Here they were at 5 o'clock in the morning after gambling all night, and they're going to go fish this big Bassmaster Classic.
Stan Sloan and I were geared up too high to do any sleeping, so we ran around together. We spent a lot of time playing blackjack. The only way we played blackjack was that I won big bass first day of the tournament, and they paid you on the spot for that, which was $100 a pound, and the fish weighed 4 pounds. So I had $400 to donate to Vegas.
They'd gamble all night and fish all day. But most of us were in bed early, knowing that we had to get up and make that long ride every morning out to Lake Mead. Most of us were really into the fishing day.
Most of the competitors were used to fishing lakes in the south, and Lake Mead was anything but a typical southern body of water.
Well, Lake Mead is big. Lake Mead is real big.
When we got to Vegas and was flying in and crossed Lake Mead, we looked down and it's massive. Everybody was just awestruck.
Most of them, as I said, were from the south, and deep water, as if a 6-foot rod couldn't touch the bottom of the lake.
It's just a big, deep, clear water lake. It looks like you can see for miles down in it.
You can see down 50 feet and almost see the date on a dime that deep. That's how clear it is.
You're talking clear water. You're talking deep water. These guys have been fishing dingy water in the south forever. How in the world are they going to adapt to that?
Once we got there, they let us make a phone call to talk to the geological people out at the dam, and what we were trying to figure out was basic water temperature, what's the average depth, you know, just some basic knowledge, because nobody knew diddly about it.
First thing I asked is, where does Las Vegas dump their waste, their treated waste? And I found out where it was, and I knew from experience at other lakes, clear lakes, that's the first place you go to catch more fish. And I didn't go anywhere else but right there.
I fished close to Tom Mann. We were in Colville Bay, and Colville Bay it's where they treat some sewage. And I'm not saying that it's dirty there, I'm saying that it's got more bloom in there, there's more color to the water, there's a little richer water.
I really tried to fish deep because it was very clear. You could see the bottom in 40 feet of water, and I'd thrown jigs and spoons and slow rolling spinner baits down 30, 40 feet and never got a bite. And I'd made up my mind, we're gonna have to run a pattern in clear water and just try to find every little target that we could find.
Bobby Murray did what none of us thought would be productive there. He threw a spinnerbait.
Where do you come out fishing a white spinnerbait in clear water that's you can see 4 miles away? It's just unreal.
Everybody thought you'd have to fish deep, and it was clear water and things, but what he did was run from Little Cove or Slough, where there was a little bit of bushes or shade cover or even tumbleweeds.
I was throwing a 1/4 ounce spinnerbait in 2 to 3 feet of water, trying to make as long a cast as I would. I'd pull back to the back end of the canyon, see if I could see any kind of cover. And the second little canyon I went back in, I caught one, and the next little canyon I went back in and I caught one. I said, you know, this is not much, but it's all I got, so I'm gonna run this pattern just as hard as I can run.
Next on Bassmaster Classic Yearbook.
Roland was coming out, and he says, I've already caught a 6-pounder in the back of that canyon. I'm going, holy moly, there's the classic for me right there.
Bassmaster Classic Yearbook has been brought to you by Citgo, Busch Light, Toyota Tundra,
Better Let It Day 1, he had a limit. Tom was like 2nd, I was like 5th or 6th. After day 2, Tom had moved to the lead. I had moved to 2nd. Bobby had dropped back to 3rd. My wife, going back to town after the 2nd day, she looked at me and she said, you know, you can win this thing. I mean, you really can. You're right there. All you've got to have is another good day.
Bobby was really the guy that I worried about catching some big fish going into the last day. And I had a small lead on him.
The last day, I immediately caught 2 fish right off the bat going in the last day. You know, you get that first fish in the boat and you kind of take a sigh of relief. And then I had about a 5-hour dry spell. I went back to the canyons, was going in one canyon, and Roland was coming out, and he says, I've already caught a 6-pounder in the back of that canyon. I'm going, holy moly, there's the classic for me right there. So I went back in that canyon, and I'd caught a 3-pounder out there. So I had 3, and then I caught another, just a keeper, and I'd worked all my pattern. I'd come all the way back through, and there's one little old flat place coming around the big basin there in what they call Vegas Bay, and I had fished that the first or second day, and I pulled through there, and I see one little ditch leading up into the desert, and in the back there was 2 big saltwater willow trees, 2 little old willow trees sitting in the back. Made the cast to the back, caught a 5.5-pounder. When he hit the bottom of the boat, I had him in a full Nelson, and then I had covered that fish up. I just smothered him in the bottom. I said, this is the one I'm gonna need. I put him in the live well. I was about 30 minutes early. I said, but we're not gonna be late. Let's head to the weigh-in. Everybody thought Tom had it. Tom had 10, I had 5. We knew it was gonna be close, and but nobody knew how good a quality my fish were. So I had, I had that one 5.5-pounder, had another couple of 3s and 4s that were in there in that bunch. Luckily enough, I just edged Tom out by 3 or 4 pounds.
Today is a combination of a full year of qualification and the Bassmaster Classic. We have a winner. His total poundage is 43 pounds, 11 ounces. What's important, I believe, let's give this man a good hand, whoever he may be. What I think is important, folks, is he got on an airplane in Atlanta, Georgia, with 23 other men from across the nation, and took off and went 10,000 feet in the air before he ever knew where he was going. And with only about 7 or 8 hours of practice, he turned loose and performed like this. I think it's a proof of a real champion. I'd like to call him up here now to accept this check for $10,000 cash, and this trophy and the honor that goes with it. A big hand for our new champion, our first champion of the Bassmaster Classic 1971, Bobby Murray.
People say, well, what was it like, that first victory of the first Bassmaster Classic? There was not anybody there. There was 24 outdoor riders, our wives, and the bass staff, and that's all that was there. So that was not nearly the to-do that it was today. It was a great victory. I won $10,000. I was elated and excited, but we really didn't know what a big deal that was till years down the road and saw what the Classic has come to be. That victory becomes sweeter every year for me. When I go and see the crowd that is there and how everybody picks out their favorite guy to cheer for and how hard these anglers work for it, to make the Classic, that thing gets sweeter and sweeter every year. I wouldn't take anything for, people say, well, don't you wish you were out there now where you could win all this money? I said, no, I'll take that first Classic because everybody will always remember that one.
This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports.